How you doing, all beautiful sons of bitches? It's your boy Max here, and today I am here with a special video, new type of video that I don't typically do on this channel. But as you all know, I bought a whole shitload of books about about a month or two ago by now, and basic Star Wars books. And you all know me, I love Star Wars, and I thought, since I bought all those, why not, make a fucking review series on them and a whole bunch of other EU comics. So that's basically a new series you can expect on this channel where, I just review Star Wars novels and I give my thoughts on them pretty much. And what better Star Wars novel to begin this series with than the first novel, Splinter the Mind's Eye. So as you can see right here, I got the classic reprint of it right here. Pretty nice, a little bent out of shape, but fuck it, that don't ruin the quality of the book. But yeah, so like I just mentioned, so it was the first book, but I'm used first loosely. It was actually the first original book, like that told a completely original story that wasn't just an adaptation of a film, in A New Hope. By the time this book got released, but yeah. So basically, for those who don't know, like how this book came to be, it was originally intended. The plot of this book was intended to be the potential sequel to A New Hope, that would have been released had A New Hope, not done as well at the box office, but did enough to warrant a low budget sequel, right? So that really explains like why the plot of this book is like a lot more low stakes, a lot less epic compared to A New Hope, which, I think is fine for this book because, it's the first of its kind. So I don't doubt that. And actually, also saying it's the first book is also a bit loose, because the first book, and in fact the first piece of Star Wars media altogether, was actually an adaptation of A New Hope, that was called Star Wars from the Adventures of Luke Skywalker. It was released in '76, a whole year before A New Hope, fun fact. So yeah, this is technically the second Star Wars novel ever. But I digress. So, and yeah, so this book was this book was based on story discussions that George Lucas had with the writer of this novel. As you can see right here, Alan Dean Foster. And Foster was also the ghostwriter of From the Adventures of Luke Skywalker, the book I just mentioned. And yeah, so George Lucas told him, it's like, hey, like, keep the plot as low stakes as possible, so that way we can turn this into a movie. And later on, I think there was an interview in a Starlog magazine that straight up confirmed that. Yeah. And another noticeable, and you can really tell this is noticeable because Han Solo is nowhere in the novel, because the reason Chewbacca isn't either, because if Han ain't there, why would Chewie be there? But yeah, the reason he's there is because Harrison Ford, they weren't sure if they were able to get him back in time for a sequel, because Harrison Ford, he was like the only real established actor by that point. But of course, Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher signed on. But I digress. So, anyways, yeah, I've basically dallied enough about the development of this book. So let's just jump right into the plot of my review, shall we? So basically, the novel starts. We're about 2 years after the events of A New Hope, right? So we open up on Luke and Leia, R2 and 3PO. They're traveling to a planet called Sercarpus 4, and they're gonna meet up with they're gonna meet up with like a rebel cell there, right? The rebellion's still raging on. So they get there, and their ships are caught in like an energy storm, and that caused them to crash land on this nearby planet, a swamp world called Mimbon. So they crash land, and now they're all like, we got to find a way off this planet. So they stumble into a mining town, and it's there Leia discovers that, oh, the Empire has set up like a mining like colony there, kind of, basically, like they've made an outpost, right? So Luke and Leia then find some disguises, and they just try to they enter into a bar, kind of like a Mos Eisley scene, right? So there's an Imperial guy who questions him there, and Luke, trying to keep up a cover story, he basically like slaps Leia and to like basically pretend that like, oh, she's my slave girl, I'm her master, nothing suspicious here, right? And there's one praise I will give this book is that Luke is actually like pretty crafty and ingenious in this book, like more than he usually is in other novels. Like he's like a straight up guile hero in this book. So that was that's a pleasant change of pace, and it kind of makes sense in this at the time when this book takes place, because Luke is still he's still pretty much kind of like a bit of a neophyte in his Jedi training. He hasn't really learned the ways of the Force. He hasn't met up with Yoda yet. So I think it's fine for Luke to act that way in this book, even though it isn't usually how he would. So then we get further. So then we get we continue the scene in the bar, right? And they meet up with this crazy woman named Hala. She's like this hermit lady. She believes in the Force, basically. And she basically is, it's like, hey, I can tell you guys aren't around here, and I can tell you boy, you are strong with the Force, and it's like, I need your help, and it's like, okay, well, what do you need our help with? So she takes out of her pocket like a little shard, a splinter, if you will, a shard of the MacGuffin of this book called the Kyber crystal. And it might be like, oh, you mean those? You mean the things? Oh, you mean the lightsaber crystals? Fuck no, fuck that. That's Disney lore. This is another thing that Disney totally fucking ripped off from the EU, but no, the KAIBURR crystal is just a force amplifying crystal, but Disney nicked that, changed the spelling of it to KHYBER for like no reason, and made it their lightsaber crystals, because as we all know, Disney is like is creatively bankrupt when it comes to Star Wars, but I digress. So Hala basically whips out a little shard of the Kyber crystal. Luke even touches it, and he's all like, whoa, my Force powers just got amplified off the fucking charts, holy shit. And it's all like, yeah, I need to get the crystal, and I want to get a hold of the crystal, and I need your guys' help. And if you do, I'll help you find a way to get off world. And it's like, okay, all right, cool, Hala. That sounds like a good idea. We'll join up with you for this. So that basically so now we basically have the goal for this book. And then we get into like one of my biggest criticisms with this book, because as soon as Luke and Leia leave the freaking as soon as they leave the cantina, Leia like pushes him into the mud and basically starts berating him for slapping her and calling her his servant girl. Now, I'm totally thinking, now I get it's fine for Leia to be, a little miffed at that. I think it's fine. Maybe she could just like say quiet, like, what the fuck, Luke? But like not that shit. Like, I think she completely overreacted, and I really think that she really should have fucking like known that Luke was trying to just save their ass so they weren't sniffed out basically by that Imperial guy in there. It's just like, Leia, it's like, you have to be, I know you're smarter than this. How the hell did you not realize that? So then but yeah, anyway, and Luke, like, no credit to him in this scene. He even pulls her down in there with him, and it's like, what the fuck? And they even start like fighting with each other in the damn mud. It's like, are you guys children here? So yeah, I think that was just the stupidest scene in the book, and I definitely expect Luke and Leia to act older, than that, act their age, basically in that statement. Anyway, so them doing in this gets like some local ruffians to basically start being all like picking on them. They're all like, it's like, hey, sweet lady, you wanna come with us, basically? And Luke, being all heroic, is like, it's like, no, she's with me, let her go. then they get into a fight. And like one of the guys in the scene has like fucking claw gauntlets and hidden blades in his shoes, and it kind of so to me that dude was basically the Star's equivalent to both Wolverine and Captain West from Wild Wild West. For those who haven't seen that show, he had like that hidden blade in his boots. But anyway, so they get into a fight with these guys, and then some stormtroopers show up, and they take everyone except for Hala, 3PO, and R2. They were just like off in the shadows. But yeah, Luke and Leia get hauled off to the local jail, and they're questioned by the main villain of this book, and his name is Captain Supervisor Grammel. Now, Grammel, I think he's a fine enough villain for this book. He's a decent villain of the week, and he's really only there to give he's basically there to give the Empire sort of like a face villain, basically like a representative to sort of represent the force the threat they impose in this book. And also he's also there to sort of help gas up Vader, and of course we knew Vader was going to be in this book. I mean, he's right there on the cover. But anyway, let me see here. Grammel also discovers and takes Luke's lightsaber and the crystal shard from him, and Luke and Leia are then thrown into a cell with these two giant, hairy, almost bear-like aliens called Yuzums, and their names are Hin and Ki. And Hin, Ki, I did not like in this book. I thought they really have no personality other than just being alcoholics. Apparently they fight drunk or some shit like that. There's two of them. When if you were to just merge them together into one character, literally nothing in the story would change. They're obviously just here to fill the role Chewbacca would normally fill, as the big hairy strong man. But yeah, they're obviously not here because they weren't sure if Harrison Ford was here. But honestly, they're nothing burgers. I did not get attached to them at all. And before I forget, yeah, Hala I actually did like. I thought she was the best supporting character they introduced in this book, and I'm honestly surprised she doesn't appear in anything else. She's really only relegated to this book and its a comic mini-series adaptation. So, anyway, kind of surprised on that. But yeah, so they throw them in the cell with they throw Luke and Leia in the cell with the Yuzum, and Grammel reports to his boss, Governor Asada. So then Hala shows up at the jail cell's window, and she uses the Force to help Luke and Leia open the cell, basically. Then the two Yuzum, they just go ape shit in the facility. They just go on a fucking rampage. They're throwing Imperials all fucking around like rag dolls. High tension escape scene, and they also get a whole bunch of weapons too. So they escape off in some all-terrain vehicle, and basically they meet up with Hala. No, I'm sorry. I'm getting my scenes mixed up. They meet up with Hala, and then they steal a vehicle. There we go. They meet up with Hala, they steal a vehicle, and then they drive off to where Hala believes the Kyber crystal is. And they're going to the place. It's housed in the Temple of Pomojima. Woo! I'm having to expect Olmec from Legends of the Hidden Temple to show up in this book now. But anyway, so they're driving through the swamplands, and then they come across a Wandrella, which is basically a giant worm monster. And the minute they got into the action scene with this thing, the whole thing, I was just imagining fucking Marcus Phoenix and his buddies showing up and just being like, it's a giant worm, basically, because it's anyway. Then so the Wandrella worm, it's chasing them all over the swampy forest, basically. Luke and Leia split from the rest to try and ward it off and defeat it. They come across a big well in the ground. They hide in a ledge in the well. the creature, tries to get down there, but it ultimately falls down there, and then it fucking dies basically. But they can't get out of there. There's like no ladder or whatever the hell. So they're unfortunately just gonna have to trek through a passage like in this well, basically, right? So we get a scene which honestly could also be cut out of the book, where they're just like making their way. They're like on a raft and whatnot. It didn't really add much. Kind of felt like a waste of time to help pad out the pages of the book. But anyway, then they happen upon this abandoned underground city, and the way and I'll say this about Foster's writing style, he's actually like really good with vocabulary. He has a wide range of like how to describe things, synonyms, antonyms, and whatnot. And it doesn't ever really get repetitive at all in the book, and so that's nice. So props to Foster for that. Um, and so like you really get the feeling that like, oh, this is like this big expansive city where he just like, it's like, what is the backstory of this city? He also describes the bar scene earlier, the fucking like the Imperial outpost and whatnot, the energy storm, characters interacting. He just writes it well with a really good vocabulary, basically. Anyway, so they get into, so they're in this underground city, but then they're stalked and attacked by these red-skinned alien dudes called Koei, right? So then Luke and Leia, so they fight them off. They even kill a few of them, and that's pretty funny because later on they make friends with the rest of them. So I thought it was pretty funny. It's like, yeah, you killed some of our buddies, but now we're friends with you. But anyway, so Luke and Leia followed the rest of the Koei back to where the rest of them were, and they're like these like tribal dudes. In a scene coming up, these guys almost feel like prototypes for the Ewoks. You see in a later scene. But anyway, so they follow the Koei back to the rest of the tribe, and somehow Hala, the Yuzums and the droids have all been completely like captured by them. I don't know how or why. The book doesn't say. I think the comic miniseries adds a scene in that explains how, but whatever. And yeah, it's just a little odd that they don't explain how they got captured by these guys. But anyway, so they're all tied up, and now Luke has to fight and defeat the big bad champion fighter, the Koei, and it's like a star. It's like a fight, like a fisticuffs fight you'd see Kirk get into in the original Star Trek show. Like in my mind, y'all know me. I'm no Star Trek fan. I've never been, but literally in my mind, I was hearing like da 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 da. That song going on in this, right? During this, that kind of fight scene. But anyway, so Luke beats the guy, obviously, and then they've put on this big feast. Yay! But then Luke senses through the Force, oh shit, Vader's shown up. And then then some Koei dudes show back up, and they confirm that, yeah, dude, Vader's here. He has a shitload of Imperials here. Even that Grammel guy, and that Grammel guy is also sporting like a new face scar because he got scarred in the escape scene from earlier. I didn't mention that. It doesn't really add anything. It's just like, I don't know. I guess I don't know. It's just more reason for Grammel to like tag Luke and Leia. It doesn't really amount to much, but okay, man. Good. But hey, scars are cool, so I'll give Foster points for recognizing that villains with scars are cool. But anyway, so the Imperials show up. They're here to wreck shop, but thankfully, they organize all the Koei to basically stage a counterattack, a pushback, right? So then Vader and Grammel, they put up a good fight. I think Leia, to her credit, even tries to fucking snipe Vader at this point. It doesn't really work because power scaling and whatnot. But anyway, yeah, like this big fight scene. Now, one thing I will say about the writing in this book is that towards the end, everything, when a lot more hectic stuff was going on all at once, it did kind of get harder for me personally to keep track of, all the stuff going on. That's probably a me thing and not really a fault of Foster's writing, but yeah, it kind of got a little hard for me to keep track of as the fight wore on. But anyway, it kind of, or yeah, like it got hard for me to keep track of like around the fourth act. Anyway, where was I? Yeah, so Vader and Grammel retreat with the few stormtroopers that didn't get killed, and then Vader kills Grammel for basically getting his ass whooped this whole book and being incompetent. And then Vader leaves to search for the Temple of Pomojima himself. He really wants to be on Legends of the Hidden Temple. And Luke and then company steal a transport vehicle and they race to the temple to try and beat Vader, right? So then Luke, Leia, Hala, and the Yuzums, they beat Vader to the temple, and now they're searching around for the Kyber crystal themselves. They're searching around and they encounter it's like some creature. I don't even remember like what the fuck it was, or if it's like an actual Star Wars, creature. Like they defeat that thing easily, and then they defeat it by pushing a pillar on it that crushes it, but that I think that caused no, that's in later. But yeah, anyways, though they're continuing the search, they use them go missing somehow, and then Vader arrives, drops some rubble on Luke, and then Luke gets pinned down, and then Vader's like, "I killed your two Yuzum buddies. They were taking up too much space in this book and weren't contributing much." So yeah, Luke is screwed, and Leia, also to her credit in this book, she picks up the damn lightsaber, and then she starts fighting Vader off. But of course, Vader outclasses her. She has no lightsaber training. She's not a Force user like he is. Obviously, he whoops her ass, and like I think he's even like poking her or whatever the hell, like with his saber, just to taunt her a lot more. And then and yeah, so Leia's screwed. Luke can't do much, but then in comes Hin, one of the Yuzum. He's mortally wounded, about to die any second now. He picks up the rock of rubble that's covering Luke's leg and gets it off for it dying. Okay, Hin, at the very least, you get that. And that's again why I say that you can honestly reduce him down to one guy and nothing will change, because he did next to nothing that Hin didn't also do, and then died. But anyway, so then Luke, he basically continues the fight against Vader, and then Luke is like guided by the spirit of Obi-Wan and empowered by the nearby Kyber crystal, like straight up severs Vader's arm. No, I'm not making this up. He severs Vader's arm, and then like Vader falls down a pit before Luke could make a killing blow, basically. And Luke is exhausted, but the fight's over, this adventure's over, and then he, Leia, R2, and 3PO set out with Hala into the midst of Mimban, ready to continue their adventures and presumably make it off the planet and get to that meeting they were going to get to at the beginning of the book. So that's basically my plot summary. Now into the actual. Now I mentioned some stuff. Now I mentioned some general thoughts, but some other thoughts I have over the book. Now, two criticisms that are the chief ones that people have with this book is the first is that Luke and Leia are obviously set up to be, lovers in this book, right? This was obviously made before Return of the Jedi, where they were confirmed to be siblings, and a lot of people just really hate the incest in this book. Me personally, I'm not as bothered by that for two reasons. Is because one, like I said, Return of the Jedi wasn't made yet, and I don't blame Alan Dean Foster for thinking that Luke and Leia were going to be the official couple of Star Wars, because, I'm pretty sure every audience member back in 1977, 78 thought that that was the direction they were going to take it. It's like, oh, like the humble farm boy saves the princess and they hook up. That's just like what people expected, given genre conventions. And also doesn't bother me because I have the benefit of hindsight, and I know that Luke and Leia most certainly would not end up. They would find out their siblings. They would drop these kinds of feelings they would have, and then they'd hook up with their own respective lovers. You know what I'm saying? Han and Mara. So it didn't bother me in that regard. And also, it doesn't bother me because, like, if you look at it from an in-story perspective, they just, like I said, they just simply don't know yet. So, it's kind of natural that they would have these feelings. And it also helps that, they don't actually, like, kiss or have a sex scene in this book. So, thankfully, nothing really disastrous in hindsight would happen. The other criticism is the one I got to towards the end of the recap. Luke beats Vader handily, and a lot of people just do not like this because they think it robs Empire Strikes Back of the big climactic energy of Luke and Vader fighting for the first time. Again, it doesn't really bother me in this book because, in the narration, it's stated that Luke was guided by Obi-Wan's spirit, and the Kyber crystal was powering him up. He lacked, so obviously he's going to get a bit of a power boost during the scene. He lacked that power boost in Empire Strikes Back, so of course he's not going to end well. Of course, Luke is the one who's going to get his hand sliced off in that movie instead of Vader. And obviously Luke has zero Jedi training here, and even with what minimal training he did have in ESP, he's still got handily beaten. So yeah, that doesn't really bother me all that much. The criticisms I do have in this book, aside from Leia just being a bit bitchy at times, and that one scene in the mud after they leave the cantina, and the two Yuzums just not really being all that special. Another criticism I have is that the plot is a little on the stale side. It's nothing all that special that we haven't seen in other stories, or even really in other Star Wars stories, where it's a hunt for a MacGuffin plot, and it's kind of strung together by a bunch of vignettes of otherwise easily defeatable foes. So there's not much in that way. But because it's the first original Star Wars novel, and they're still trying to figure out what the original trilogy saga and what the overall George Lucas saga was going to be. What Star Wars was supposed to gonna be and feel like. I can give this book a pass, sort of, and like some slack in that regard. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And so yeah, overall, if I had to like rank this book, like give it a number grade, I would give this a 3 out of 5, right? So it's a pretty good book to start with if you're going to get into the expanded universe. I do recommend picking up this book. Just understand that it's really nothing all that special in the grand scheme of things. But it did help pave the way for future Star Wars books. From what I heard, it actually did sell pretty well when it first released back in the day. So yeah, definitely check this book out if it fancies you. If you just want like a nice done in one. Check this out, if you're a fan of Star Wars, obviously, and check this out if you want to get into the expanded universe, if you want to see what Star Wars has beyond the 6 films. So yeah, thumbs up for me. But anyways, guys, thanks for listening to my review, guys. If you guys read this book, let me know in the comments what you thought of it. I'm really interested to hear what you say. So if you guys enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, comment below if you thought, subscribe for more videos like this, and I'll see you guys next time in the backseat. Take care!